Request them to please just introduce themselves for a minute as such. Silver members.
Hi everyone, my name is Tapan. I work for a company called Realtor Estate Consultants, and we work under Mr. Ravi Verma, who is the chairman of LAR. Thank you.
There are some other silver members. Please come forward. It will be great as such.
Hello everyone, my name is Abhijit Patil. I work in the firm Authentic Properties. We work in commercial and industrial. Thank you.
Welcome Abhijit and welcome Tapan. Some other members please.
Hi everyone, my name is Mehran Parwani. My company name is Parwani Realty and we look at South Pune. We focus on residential. Thank you.
Welcome everyone to the family of Crop. Any other silver members? Okay. Could I request Jyotish Narang to please introduce Amit sir?
Good afternoon everyone. In fact, good evening. Respected members on the dais, Amit sir, all the Propian, Silver, Gold members, and all the online brothers and sisters of the fraternity watching. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Amit Damodar Chok, and this is how he is. You will find him on LinkedIn. He has over 10,000 followers. He comes with an enormous experience and depth of knowledge, nearing 20 years of experience in handling real estate transactions. Amit is the member of the Royal Institute, MRICS he's done, Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, and this he was awarded for his achievements in real estate. Handling real estate transactions under the three brands. The first one being Chattel's Realty, which specializes in structuring transactions that includes large land acquisitions, JDs, JVs, fund management and commercial real estate transactions. The second one is allwarehouses.in. Is an industrial real estate focused consulting firm which has listed over 1,500 industrial sheds, godowns, warehouses, cold storages, converted lands for factory and spaces. They are present in 3 cities and they are looking to expand across India. All Warehouses is known for its transaction speed. They consistently close deals in a day of receiving the inquiry and itself, and closing nearly one big deal every week in Chennai. The third one is luxclusivehomes.com. As the name suggests, they deal in the most exclusive and luxurious residential apartments. In fact, they have a record for selling the 2 most expensive apartments in Chennai. Their clients include L&T, Tata's, Maruti Suzuki, ITC, ACC, and so on, a lot of HNIs and several other large brands. Currently, from handling to leasing, Amit has now moved to offering end-to-end solutions for investors where you can get a ROI of around 12% per annum. And on the personal front, Amit has studied in Don Bosco and Loyola College in Chennai and is happily married to Kripa, and they're blessed with a son Vidya. He was born and brought up in Chennai and he lives with his parents. He's the founder president of REAP, Real Estate Association of Professionals, and is a Rotarian and a past roundtable member. So I give you all a
Friends, now you all know we have a Dronacharya amongst us who is going to train us where warehouse is concerned, where warehouses versus factories as such. On behalf of Professional Realtors of Pune, PROP, we are so happy to welcome the National Realtors members for this live show of Amit Damodar Chok. Amit, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. First of all, very good evening to all of you, and thank you to Prof for giving me this opportunity. So it's a weekday, it's working hours, and I'm glad that all of you have actually taken time to be here. Am I loud enough? I actually normally speak in my association, without the mic, so. We needed mic without the mic. You actually need it. Okay, sure. All right. Great. So I'm just waiting for the PPT to come on. So today what we are going to be talking about is actually quite a dry subject. It's about warehouses and factories, but it is the supply sector. So the potential for closing transactions in there is absolutely huge. In fact, what we've also done in actually Chennai is that we have created these opportunities for people who are only selling residential. There is a thought process behind this, which is as simple as a person who's selling high-end residential knows a HNI who has bought an apartment for about 2 crore or 3 crore or 5 crore. And actually these days, those kind of opportunities are available in actually industrial real estate, where you can buy a plot for about 1 crore, where you can put up a shed and you can lease it and you can get a return of about 10%. So with all these HNIs who have their homes here in say Pune or in Chennai, and the next generation is actually moving abroad, they are all looking for passive income, especially post-COVID. So as a retirement plan, we are actually getting them to invest in actually industrial real estate, because the ROIs are a very, very clear 10% plus. Further, we also get IRRs of about 16%, because you also have an appreciation of about 5% every year. So your annual increment on your rents is 5%, automatically the asset price also goes up 5%. So typically those who are selling residential real estate are also now doing industrial real estate there in Chennai. It's a very large opportunity for all of us. And today we'll be covering about 8 topics. We will actually start with the basics of industrial real estate. The format here is actually each of these topics we will only spend 5 minutes, and then pause after every topic, and I'll take a Q&A for about 5 minutes, so that we can actually finish each of these one by one. Right. So we have some a remote that I can operate, or you good. Okay, so you want to get a seat, you get more comfortable, make it easier for you. Yes, sure. So just requesting the hotel people to actually put off the lights in front. Right. So we'll actually move on. So we're going through the basics of industrial real estate. The first raw material everybody knows is land. So industrial land is what is the base for everything else that you can do with industrial real estate. And what can be done on land is actually something that we will actually come to. A very, very important aspect over here is if you get the right land in the right location at the right price, that's what makes a transaction workable. And it's very important for you to understand the concept of FSI, cost of land. So industrial real estate has a very low FSI, which means that you are able to achieve an FSI of 0.5 to 0.65. That's all you're able to achieve. So if your land cost is say 1 crore an acre, you have to multiply 43,560, which is an acre, into 0.5 or 0.6, which means that you can only build 22,000 to about 27,000 square feet per acre. So you divide your 1 crore by that 27,000 square feet, and there you arrive at a cost of somewhere around 370 rupees, 380 rupees. So your cost is calculated divided by FSI, not on the acre cost. So this is a very, very critical aspect. If you understand the FSI cost of land, then you understand the construction cost. When you add up both, you actually get a total cost. That's when you are able to actually calculate the ROI. So this PPT is anyway going to be shared with you. These are the most basic parameters that you have to have in place. before you offer an industrial land to any buyer or any investor or actually any fund. Today there are close to 80 international funds looking for industrial land here in India. All of you would have heard of Indospace, you've heard of ESR, you've heard of Ascendas. There are way too many funds in this space right now. There are about 80 domestic and international funds, and get live on YouTube as well, right? You ready? Yes. Are you able to hear me? Okay, but it's still connected to the speakers. Are you able to hear me?
Yeah. Is it also fine for doing live stream? Okay. Yes, yes, sir. Yeah, so before we move on, there is heavy rain in Pune, so we just had a short power outage and we've actually connected back. So no apologies for the disruption here. So moving on, I was actually talking about land. I was talking about the land FSI cost. That's the base thing that you need to understand before you offer any land to these large funds. Now, beyond these large funds, there are a lot of family funds that are coming in. So, family funds are basically funds of large industrial houses. Like, I don't know if you've heard of Mukesh Ambani setting up his family fund now in Singapore. So he's creating a family fund in Singapore, which will be investing in opportunities in India and in multiple countries. So the same way, the founders of Infosys, the founders of the Tata group of companies, or the founders of Wipro, the top-notch directors, everybody has these family funds which invest everywhere, and they are also looking at warehousing options. So land, like I said, is the raw material and the most critical part. So typically, once you buy land, warehouse also constitutes part of industrial real estate. All of you know what a warehouse is. So warehouse is actually simply a place where people store material, and factories are actually where people manufacture goods. All of you are also aware about temperature controlled warehouses. So these classify as cold storages, and cold storages are again a sector with great potential. So cold storages are actually used not just to actually store food and meat products. There are a lot of chemicals that are actually stored in cold storages. You'll be surprised to know that apart from pulp, you also have chemicals that are used in tire manufacturing, various other uses. All of those are actually stored in cold storages. It's also very important for the pharma requirements, especially vaccines, that they have to be stored at a certain temperature. Cold storages classify under two broad categories. One is a chiller, which is a +0 temperature, and the other is frozen, which is a sub-zero temperature. Industrial parks. So all of you must be aware of industrial parks. If you've been to Chakan, you have seen a park by ESR, you have seen a park by Indospace, and the various other funds. Now these industrial parks offer a lot of comfort to a whole lot of tenants because there's a lot of shared infrastructure. So if a tenant requires 1 lakh square feet, he has two options. He could take a standalone 4-acre land with a 1 lakh square feet built up, or he could be part of a larger park. Now the advantage of being part of a larger park is when there's any kind of a local issue, which is common here in India, it is solved by people collectively and it's also solved by the park developer. Apart from that, it's also cost effective because the cost of setting up STPs and various other amenities is marginally higher to set it up for a 25-acre development from a 5-acre development. So that cost gets shared among everybody. Free trade warehousing zones are a category where you have a piece of land in India which is treated as a territory of a foreign country. So when you bring in goods from abroad, or you're going to be exporting goods abroad, if you move it into a free trade zone, in the case of a import, you actually don't need to pay a customs duty. You have to pay a customs duty only when you remove it from the free trade zone and bring it into your store. So for a person, say for example, Apple. Apple has about 100,000 phones that come in every time that there's a sale. But Apple actually dispatches only about 10,000 phones to all the dealers only for your display and for also the online sales. When these phones sell, that's when the phones come out of the FTWZ, which means that the customs duty is paid typically after a 15-day period or a 1-month period or a 3-month period, only when it's required. And in certain cases, if the product doesn't sell, it can be shipped back abroad without paying the customs duty. So it is stored in the FTWZ without paying any kind of customs duty. For an exporter, it is highly advantageous because he could drop his material into the FTWZ, which can be shipped maybe 1 month later or 3 months later, but is eligible to actually claim his GST and duty drawbacks immediately, the moment it's placed in the FTWZ itself. Moving ahead, you'd heard of CFS. Container freight stations are places where containers are stored. Typically, these are most commonly close to the ports, the shipping ports. ICDs are the inland container depots. So in places like Bangalore and Pune where you don't have a port, you would always have an ICD. These are actually normally linked with railway siding. So you have to be close to a railway station where you have a track connectivity. So these containers come in straight from the port and are actually stored in ICDs, and then it's also used to also ship them out. Dry ports are also very, very similar to an ICD. These days, you may have heard of multimodal logistics park. So multimodal logistics parks are also a new concept where a manufacturer, for example in Chakan, has something to export. He could just go and place it in a dry port in Pune itself, and he could claim his GST refunds and his duty drawbacks, and his material is moved from the dry port into the Mumbai port for shipping as and when the shipping lines are actually available. But for him it is a benefit because he can always raise his bill and he can claim his duty drawbacks the moment it is placed in the dry port. What we've not covered here is SEZ. SEZ are special economic zones. There's also one large one here in Pune, which I think is owned by Baba Kalyani, right? Yes, Gate City. So SEZs are actually special economic zones. These are places where materials are manufactured mainly for export, so that they don't undergo GST payments, and you don't have the hassle of claiming a GST refund once it is shipped abroad. Everybody has heard about distribution centers and fulfillment centers. These are basically related to e-commerce. This is a newer concept. There is a large demand for these kind of facilities in the center of city. The smaller versions of these distribution centers are also called dark stores. I do not know if you've already got inquiries from these Sunny Bees and various other departmental stores who are looking at dark stores. So while they have a store where they display most of their goods, the rents are very high in retail stores. So they keep a dark store somewhere else close by where they can always bring their material in. It's more a version of what we used to call a godown or a godam earlier. So now moving on over here, basically I covered the basics of industrial real estate. If you have any questions on what I've already spoken, you could ask me. Or I could move on to the next section, which is an all-important section on what are the challenges for brokers in industrial real estate. I can? Sure. Right.
Excuse me? Can
Yes.
you put it on a full screen? Be more visible.
Yeah, can you just put that on a full screen? Okay, no, this is being shown from Chrome, so maybe you could use the zoom option on top. So come here and use the zoom option. I don't know. So I'll be sharing this with you anyway, and this is something that was not originally there as part of our presentation, but I added this because I actually thought it's relevant to all of us. So a lot of brokers, tell me that, Amit, there are a whole lot of challenges that we face. How is it that we overcome all these challenges? So first is let us address what these challenges are. So the first challenge is that today the demands of tenants are very, very large spaces. So in the market, we don't have all these large spaces. Several times you would have heard of inquiries coming in that Amazon is looking for 500,000 square feet of space or 200,000 square feet of space, but the actual availability of all these spaces is not currently there. So that's the first challenge that you face. Second challenge is availability of actually grade A space. Now I'll explain grade A space as we move ahead, but knowing people traditionally, all the old landlords looked at maximizing their ground coverage and maximizing their rent. So they did not follow norms. They did not leave enough space for fire tenders to move around. They did not follow all the rules. So if you look at the traditional warehouses, the study that we have done in Chennai, 92% of warehouses do not have the basic plan sanctions and the basic requirements as per law. So grade A space is actually growing at a very, very fast pace right now. All the top industrial developers are actually only making grade A space. Like I said, approval is a very big challenge. Fire NOC also is a very big challenge. In the older sheds, these days everybody is actually following all of these. Dangerous goods and actually chemical storage facilities. So you would have all seen in the news there was a big disaster in one of the ports in the Middle East, close to Morocco. So there is something known as PESO certification. When you store petroleum products, it's very, very important to have certain guidelines and actually certain safety norms which are not available today in most cities in India. So most of the PESO goods, 80% of them have been stored without proper licenses, which is now changing. Client's budget versus location. So this is a very, very constant issue. So clients always come to us and they say, look, I want something in the old warehousing zone. Like in Chennai, it's called Maravaram, which has now become a residential area. We have a metro rail connectivity there. The warehouses are getting converted to actually residential. So they want to have a warehouse close to the city, but they don't want to pay a rent of 30 rupees. They're actually talking about the older rents which were at 15 rupees 10 years ago. So these are challenges that we always face. Slow decision making is actually always an issue. The junior staff will call you, they'll say, look, we want a warehouse today. It's like absolutely urgent. Our boss asked us to close it yesterday. They will come look at a lot of things and then you don't get response from their senior people. Generating genuine inquiries. So now this is something that we actually find a lot. Every time a company comes to the point where their lease has to be renewed, they will call 10 brokers and they'll ask for space. Now the reason that they do that is because they want to know what are the market rents and they take a quote from you, they will come with you, look at the warehouse, they will come to the owner, negotiate, they will bring them down to a certain price, prepare a term sheet and then go back to the old owner and then negotiate. This is a frequent problem and this has happened to us with all the big companies. So the junior staff have to actually justify their salary, they have to justify their role in the company. So the company has to cut costs somewhere else for them to get their salary. This is actually frequent. Competition working with 0% brokerage. So this is a new issue. We've been facing a lot of issues from large brokerages, most of them international, where they go to these MNCs and they tell them, look, I'm not going to charge you anything. All I want from you is a mandate. So this sets an uneven playing field for all of us. Now, while our company does not do that, we don't work for free. We get paid even from Amazon and Flipkart, while 99% of brokers don't get paid because they have a policy that they don't pay, but they pay us. The companies that don't pay us, we don't work for them. But this is a very critical issue. So a lot of foreign companies that are coming in here, the IPCs go, pick up your mandate, say that I'm not going to charge you anything. Once they have the mandate, then they go to several owners and they say, look, I have this MNC. And if you want this MNC, you have to work only with me. And if you work only with me, instead of paying me a 1 month rent, you have to pay me a 3 month rent. So they eventually get the entire commission, but they are creating a uneven playing field. That is something for you to take a call whether you want to charge the client or you want to charge the owner. So yeah, these are the basic challenges. If any of you have any challenges that you face, you could also share those. What are the payouts? Right. So typically these are actually rental transactions. So what we charge in Chennai is a 1 month rent from the owner. What I understand in central India, owners pay 2 month rent for a 5-year lease, owners pay a 3 month rent for a 9-year lease. But every market is different. In Chennai, whatever term you get the owner, nobody pays more than a 1 month rent. So we go with what the market is used to. However, when it comes to landlords, we don't work for less than a 1 month rent. There are a lot of local brokers who work for a 7-day rent or a 15-day rent. We don't do that. When it comes to tenants, the larger tenants, the big e-commerce players, we charge them a 7-day rent because they are really large. They give you the huge volumes to play with. For the mid-level, we actually charge actually 15-day, and the small level we charge 30-day. Most people are willing to pay a 30-day. If you stick to your fee, they will come around, provided you have the right options. See, the way we pitch it to a tenant to pay us is, I tell the tenant that you're not going to pay out of the pocket, you're going to pay out of the profit. So we leverage on our relationship with the landlord. So if the landlord is quoting 27 rupees in the market, by the sheer volume of deals that we do with the landlord gives us the flexibility to sit and decide the rent and close the deal. So we could come down from a 27 to a 25 or a 24 and justify to the tenant that, look, I'm saving you this 2-3 rupees. That's because we hold on the landlord, right? So even if he meets a landlord and the landlord says you talk to Amit, so the tenant understands that it's in my purview or to actually bring down the rent to a 24 or a 25. So we explain to them that if you're not going to be paying me the rent, not going to pay me my commission, your rent is going to be 27 rupees. So
usually what is the lease term, lock-in and escalation?
Right. So there are 2 types of tenants, which is a warehousing and a factory tenant, which is a manufacturing tenant. We are coming to those, like who's a better tenant. Typically, if you look at it, the warehousing guys post-COVID are actually only looking at 1-year lock-ins. They're looking at 3-year agreements and 1-year lock-ins. The factory guys, they look at longer tenures. They're willing to give a 6-7-year lock-in. They're willing to do a 9-year lease. And the reason being that the factory tenants spend a lot on the infrastructure. So while your asset of say 1 lakh square feet may have costed the owner 25 crore, we've seen manufacturing tenants spend at least, anything between 6 crore to actually 25 crore in the infrastructure set up inside there. And every time that they need to move a machinery from point A to point B, it becomes extremely expensive. The machines are extremely heavy. They're actually flow mounted. They have to create a base for it. So it becomes very expensive for them to shift. So they don't want the landlord also to vacate them to actually save on those costs.
Will any tenure lease plays any role in deciding the consultancy? Suppose if we...
Absolutely right, yes. So like I explained, in central India, from our NER association, I've actually met people from Indore, Bhopal. They tell me that for a 3-year agreement, they get paid 1 month rent. For a 5-year agreement, they get paid 2 months rent, and for a 9-year, they get paid 3 months rent. But in Chennai, it's a standard 1 month rent. Yes.
That depends on place to place.
Absolutely. So it depends on what the market is used to.
There is no any standard?
There is no standard across India. In fact, the way you do business across India is also not standard. So the way you deal with owners in Delhi is very different from the way you deal with owners in Chennai. So owners in Chennai are a lot more educated. I send them a fee confirmation over mail, they reply over mail. But if you were to do it to somebody from Gurgaon, you may get abused. So no standardization on the fee. You can't really have a SOP in the dealing as well. So we try to implement that in actually all warehouses across India, but we're not able to. So we understood that every city has to do its own
So
method.
what about the lease if it is more than 10 years? I mean, will it vary in that case or no?
So see,
Longer lease more than 10 years.
right. So in Chennai it's just a standard 1 month. So owners are used to paying that 1 month, and that's what we get. We don't compromise on the 1 month. We don't take less than 1 month because we also don't get more than 1 month ever. So we stick to the 1 month. Yeah.
How do you get the Amazons and the Flipkarts to pay you when they are not paying 99%?
That is because at a point in time in Chennai we had 23 exclusive mandates for 1.1 million square feet, and the sheds that they wanted were with us. So it was very
It's all
simple.
inventory based.
Yeah, it was actually very simple. If you're going to pay me my fee, you're going to pay 24 rupees to the owner. If you're not going to pay my fee, you're going to pay 26 rupees to the owner. It's your wish.
What are the roles and responsibilities of the person who is with the transaction?
So the roles and responsibilities of a broker. So typically your roles and responsibilities depend on the expectation of the client. If you look at our office, the SOP is actually extremely clear. The first things first is after we understand the client's requirement, we actually put it down over a mail and we get a confirmation from him that this is what he's expecting out of us. So first is you need to understand whether what a client is asking is workable. If it is workable, you put down a minutes of your call and you explain what is it that you have to offer. Our office gives an opportunity to even make the lease agreements. We have an internal in-house lawyer who drafts the lease agreement and does it. But in some cases, the landlord says, look, I have so many sheds, I have a standard draft, I'm going to go with my draft. And in many cases, the tenant says that I have my standard draft, it's the same draft across India. So we go with our draft. So the scope can vary. If there are individual landlords, smaller tenants, people in a rush to close deals, so we offer all the services, including actually lease agreement, including taking care of registration of the lease as well.
And do you advise on the before a person starts constructing a warehouse, what should be the height, what should be the location, what should be the are you advising role as well?
Very, very interesting. So I think as the last part of my introduction, Jyotish mentioned that we offer end-to-end services. Now I'll explain to you. There is no standard spec in one single city. I can speak a lot about Chennai. So Chennai has 5 warehousing zones. On the east is the sea. In the north we have a place called Madhavaram, which is an old warehousing location. Now that is usually used for items that come in from the port and move back to the port and for FMCG goods. So these are short-term storages, and over there price is very critical. So people are not looking to stack up material. They're fine with a shed that's 16 feet high or 20 feet high. It's more short-term because the material is coming from the port, it's going to move in, or it's going to the port, it's just there temporarily. So they're looking at a lower spec, they're looking at a lower end. When you move to the Sriperumbudur area, which is similar to Chakan, you're looking at a higher spec and you're looking at a higher end. Over there, the tenants are actually mostly manufacturing, and they use EOT cranes. So when you use EOT cranes, you have to have a higher shed because your underhook height of the EOT can be between 6.3 meter to about 9 meters. So it depends on what material you're lifting, what is the weight of the material, where is it going to be moved. So that's where we come in. So that's what sets us apart from the IPCs, because we understand each and every requirement of the tenant. If it's 90% of my business is manufacturing leases, not warehousing. When a tenant sits with me, we understand his business, we understand each and every aspect. We design his shed and then we give the brief to the developer. So it's very important to know your client in depth. It's a very technical subject. It's beyond brokerage.
So how do you do the sourcing of landlord?
How do we do the sourcing of landlord? We have 1500 sheds listed on our site. The sourcing is done by our people. So typically we like to make our resources highly efficient. So when I have an inspection in say a location like Madhavaram, I tell my person that you're anyway traveling 50 kilometers. So you spend the rest of the day there and find me 3 new sheds. That's what we do. So when he goes that side, he's not supposed to come back to office till he finds new premium shares. That's efficient use of resources.
So you represent what are the sizes of the warehouse, and then mid segment, large segment, and the normal. So
Right. So we have classified it as grade A, grade B, and grade C. So a grade A tenant would typically require a 1 lakh square feet and upward. A grade B would actually require a 50,000 square feet, and a grade C would require 25,000 downward. Now, when I say that, there are a lot of distribution centers of Amazon and Flipkart which are 20,000 and 15,000. Those are obviously separate, but generically it's a 1 lakh 50,000 and a 25,000. That's how we classify. Grade A tenants also require grade A specifications, which means their cost is higher. So like I was saying, in Chennai there are 5 locations. The spec is different in all 5. If you build a spec of one zone in another zone, it's not going to lease. So you would ask me, Amit, you say that warehousing is so good and there's so much of demand and there's nothing available. But when I drive down Sri Perumbudur, I saw these 5 sheds, and then I say, did you even go and look at it? It's a Madhavaram spec built in Red Hills. Nobody's ever going to take it. So a landlord who's in Madhavaram only knows what he built, right? So he's going to build the same thing there. He hasn't gone down to the depth and understood what the tenant wants there. So that's the advisory that we give. We give a location advisory, we give a specification advisory. So going further, location advisory again is actually something that's highly technical. So when we say Sri Perumbudur in Chennai, it's not just a city. When you say Chakan here, it's not just the village, right? It's a whole area. So Sri Perumbudur is 20 kilometers by 20 kilometers. That's 400 square kilometers. But there are just 4 spots in Sri Perumbudur that would lease like this. So if you had built a shed, while it's getting constructed, it's gone. In that 400 square kilometers, there are just 4 spots. So it doesn't mean that Sri Perumbudur is a hot market and you go and build anywhere and it's going to lease. No, that's a very big risk. So we generate like 3,000 leads a year, and that gives us data on precisely which points the client is looking to lease, what kind of spec he is actually looking for, and what rent he is willing to pay. So that's why we give a location advisory, a spec advisory, and a financial advisory. That's how we bring in investors to those spots where we know that I can lease. We give them that spec that I know that majority of the tenants want, and we work out the viability in advance, and he makes 11% out of it.
what is the minimum load in meters? I mean requirement for warehouse?
So typically, people will tell you that I need a 60 feet road, right? And when you go down to see the site, the broker has already called up and told you, sir, there's a 40 feet road. You come and look at the site, but when you actually go there and see the road is only 20 feet. This has happened to all of us, I'm actually sure, right? So what is required is you require a 30 feet laid portion of road, which is a tar road. In a 30 feet road, 2 containers can cross each other very, very comfortably. That's more than sufficient. I'm talking about tar portion. So when we send an option to a client, we hold a tape, we actually click a photograph, and we show him that this is the actual road. We talk about the tar portion, not about the shoulders. On a 30 feet road, even if you assume that 1 container is parked on the side, still 2 containers can cross each other with a little difficulty. So we always advise that you should have a 30 feet tar portion. So I can move on to the next part. Yes.
One more question. Is the cost of the construction nowadays seems to be increasing? The viability of leasing also makes little difficult because of the rate increase?
Right. Very good question. So typically what's happening is, with the cost of construction going up, tenants are also willing to pay more. So people understand that the rents are going up, and it's also dependent on actually demand and supply. So if it's not going to be viable, people are not going to build in that market. They're going to move to another area. So automatically, once the supply reduces, so the price automatically goes up again. So the market forces actually keep these in check.
Is that the distance, as you say, that if it is in Chakan, the rent is, let's say, 25 rupees, and if you go 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers ahead of Chakan, assuming it is 30 feet proper road, and the rent is, let's say, 15 or 20 rupees, will the client ready to go away 10 minutes or 10 kilometers further and save the rent, or no? The distance also matters to the tenant.
Good point. So this is analyzed in 2 ways. If it's an e-commerce client, he's not going to go. because the e-commerce guy, his last mile delivery cost is extremely high. So the people who go and pick up goods from Amazon and Flipkart use a two-wheeler, and you know they are paid per kilometer. So he has to pay for every two-wheeler to actually travel per kilometer, and the quantity of goods that he can carry is the same as just a backpack. So an e-commerce guy has to be closer to the city. He's willing to pay the 10 rupees extra. But with somebody who's not supplying to the city and is going to be supplying outside of the city, he's happy to go away. Sure. So moving on, I actually spoke about grade A warehouse. I'll just explain to you what a grade A warehouse is. So you can actually move on to the next one. Right. So grade A warehouse. Now, what is more important than the center height is actually the side height. Grade A warehouse, typically the side height is 33 feet. We're talking about a height of 10 meters to 12 meters. And the center height really doesn't matter, because the center height is just dependent on which area you're located in, the quantity of rain, whether you can do a 1:10 slope, or 1:15 slope, or 1:20 slope. So what is more important is the side height. Now, height is important because, as I explained, for a manufacturing tenant, the underhook height of the EOP crane is important. And for an e-commerce tenant or a warehousing tenant, he could stack more using racks. The floor load bearing capacity is actually typically 6 metric tons. So flooring is a very technical subject in warehousing. People think that it's just a cemented flooring. I could take a session on flooring which could last 5 hours because it's highly complex. There are various kinds of flooring. I only touched the basic, which is what is the load that a floor can take. What is the flooring type? So the most common today is actually FM2 flooring. Yes. The voice is low? Oh, okay, but my wife always says I scream. Okay. Sure. I just hope if you can just check with them, it's a little better. Sure. Okay. Yeah. So the next part is the loading deck. This is actually a running platform with a canopy. So I don't know if you have seen warehouses. They have these shutters, and then outside the shutter you have an extended area which is about 1.5 to 2 meters, running the entire portion outside the warehouse. So those are called the loading platforms. They are actually covered with a canopy on top to actually prevent rainwater from the coming in. Should I change? Yeah. Shall we go back to that mic? No. Shall we go back to the other mic? So the microphone. This is jarring also a little bit, right?
Yes.
Right. We just take a minute's break. We just change the microphone.
This is, I think, this has a lower volume. Can you just increase the volume of it? Yeah, checking. Yeah, is this clear? Done. Yeah, yes, you can just ask them to also check this. Yeah, done. Thank you. Right, so, go to the next page. Yes. No, to the next page. Yes. So, are you all aware of what is called the plinth level? What should be the plinth level of a warehouse?
0.9 meter.
Okay. So, typically, the plinth level of a shed is now 1.2 meter. 1.2 meter is 4 feet. And a 1.2 meter is typically calculated because of the trailer height. So you have these containers, the 20 feet and the 40 feet containers coming in on trailers. So when the trailer comes in, reverses on, it's a lot easier to just open the door of your container and actually pull your material in. So 1.2 meter is a standard height for a warehouse. If it's a factory space, so you don't need to actually make it so high. You would normally do a factory floor at 0.5 meter to 1 meter. Most of the factory sheds are at 0.5 meter, just to avoid flood waters from coming in, or rain waters from actually coming in. Why the factory floors are lower is obviously it reduces cost. And second is, in factories, the trailers come into the shed. So you have the EOT cranes that carry these huge loads and place it directly on the trailer rather than putting it into a container.
So that's why you have to have a lower height. If it's too high, then you'll have to create a ramp. The cost of the ramp is high. Maneuvering on a ramp is difficult, and also you'll also have to have wider shutters if you have to bring in trailers in there. The structures, these days, typically all of you have heard of PEVs, which are pre-engineered buildings. So these are typically steel structures made in factories. But the first 2.5 to 3 meters is actually concrete walls. People are actually doing precast structures today. Earlier it was actually brick walls for about 2.5 meter. Roof type. So there is a new technology called standing seam. It's a screwless roof which gives you a life of about 25 years. It's absolutely leak proof. It costs a little more, about 40 rupees a square foot more, but it's worth its price. The roof slope, I already mentioned, it depends on your climatic conditions, whether you have to have a sharper slope or a shorter slope. The number of shutters and docks. Now, for a warehouse, the industry standard is currently at 6,000 square feet per shutter. For a factory, you actually don't need many shutters. You may actually require hardly two. So, one for your goods coming and raw material coming in, and actually one for your finished goods going out. So I have also spoken about automated shutters. Insulation is actually mandatory to actually keep the heat out. An ideal span is about 24 by 16 meters. Of course, architects do a 23 to 26 meter. That helps in actually the forklifts moving in easily. It gives flexibility for you to actually do your racking and stacking. Ventilators, you have two types of ventilators. You have a ridge vent in the center of the roof, that's a single vent. Or you have the turbo fans which keep rotating on the roof. The turbo fans are better avoided because they are screwed and then those screws rust and you actually get leaks. Translucent lighting panels are basically transparent portions of the roof that let natural light in. Office space is actually normally an office space is anything between 5 to 10% of your floor area. So if you build like a 100,000 square feet warehouse, you would have a mezzanine of about 10,000 square feet where you can have an office space. So when you actually do a factory, there is a lot more requirement of common amenities, outside amenities basically. In a warehouse, you have very few people working. So typically you don't need to focus too much on the public transport being close by. You don't require a lot of amenities for them. But when it's a factory, you have a lot of people working. So you need canteen areas, you need first aid rooms, you need a lot more toilets for blue collar, white collar workers, all of that. Firefighting today is actually mandatory. Water management is actually very, very critical. All these MNCs look at carbon credits today. So installing solar helps them actually claim carbon credits. The internal roads are actually either done in RCC where you actually do the loading areas and put paver blocks in actually all other areas. So compound walls are actually done up to a 3 meter height, which is actually 10 feet high, and then we actually put up fencing. These are all common industry standards these days. If you look at all the top industrial park developers, they follow these standards. Earthquake-proof buildings, transparency. So this is a very, very important aspect. When you go to a market like Bhiwandi, you will realize that if you take a 1 lakh square feet warehouse, you are charged for 1,25,000 square feet. You are charged for 25,000 square feet that you have not actually built. Now that happens in actually Bhiwandi. In other markets, you are charged, some markets 9% extra, some markets 11% extra, some markets 15% extra. So it's very, very important for you as a broker to explain to your client a comparison of the rent divided by the carpet area. What's the total rent divided by the carpet area? So you arrive at a carpet area comparison among the options. So our clients really appreciate that when we actually tell them that, look, this client is actually charging you 24 rupees, but your effective rent is 28, whereas this gentleman is charging you 25 and your effective rent is 26. So when we break this down and we share it with them, it actually becomes easier for us because we are more appreciated and they value our services and our inputs there.
moving ahead, yes.
This is built up to carpet ratio you are talking about, or what exactly? It is loading, or why it is getting charged 25% more?
Right, so the Vivaldi market just has a system. It's a flat system, not from now. It's
It is
a
kind
system.
of a market trend over there, or how?
It is a market trend. Everybody charges 25%
Okay,
more.
and how you break it further? I mean, to give the explanation to the client side, how it works.
How do we break it further? Okay,
Yeah.
so typically every owner has a different way of charging. Now I can give you an example in Chennai, which will also be very, very similar here in Pune. So if you go to an older shed, if a person has built 100,000 square feet, he has typically measured it as a plinth area. That's the outer to outer of the shed. Those days they didn't have a system of charging more than what they built. So the tenants also used to come, they would actually measure outer to outer and they would pay for 100,000 square feet. These days, the industrial park developers, some of them charge a 9% loading like I mentioned. So the 9% is not actually built, there is no transparency. They will just give you a blank statement saying that look, this 9% is adjusted in the water sum, it's adjusted in the fire sum, it's adjusted in the security cabin. There's no clear breakup. Some industrial park developers will charge you instead of 9%, 11%, some charge you 15%. So what we do what actually we do is when we give a client 3 options, I send my people to physically measure the shed and actually tell them that look, this gentleman is charging you a total amount of 1.5 lakhs for an example for 10,000 square feet plinth. While the calculation of the developer may be 90,000 is the shed, say about 9,000 square feet is the shed. He's charging 1,000 square feet more, which is other areas. So we do a carpet to carpet comparison, so that the tenant understands exactly what is the effective rent. Factories versus warehouses. Now typically this is a very, very important aspect when people come and join our office. I actually ask them to go and look at my videos on YouTube and actually understand from our articles what is the difference between a factory and a warehouse. Typically from the outside, both look very, very similar. So it's hard to tell for a new person what is the actual difference. Now, first things first. So the location of a warehouse can be located anywhere. It is actually based on the demand. Factories have to be located in a place where you have power. Power is very essential. You should have the ability to actually get your pollution NOC, so it can't be close to a city. Factory requires a large number of workers, so you have to have very good public transport. So location is actually very different from a warehouse and a factory. I already mentioned about power. Flow height I have explained earlier. So the flow height is 1.2 meter for a warehouse, 0.5 meters for a factory. Load bearing capacity is actually 5 to 6 metric ton for a warehouse because you're only storing goods. In a factory, it could be anything between 10 to 15 metric ton. Now, that's because of the machines being very heavy, and when the machines are operational, the vibration of the machine can actually cause the flow to crack. So that's why you actually need a much stronger flow. So you can't put a warehouse to be used as a factory if the flooring is wrong. The entire flooring will actually crack very fast. Right. So I mentioned about loading bays as well. A factory only requires one for the incoming goods and one for outgoing, whereas a warehouse, you have continuous unpacking and repacking, so you require a lot more loading bays. Shutters are 13 feet width normally in a warehouse, 18 feet in a factory. Why? Because the trailer has to come into a factory. Ceiling height I have already covered. Type of buildings these days, everybody does PEB buildings. So you do the RCC walls up to 3 meters, then you do a PEB. EOT cranes are actually required in factories. The capacity of EOT cranes can vary between 5 ton to 50 ton is what we have operated until now, what we have serviced for our clients. So EOT crane is a very technical subject again. You can't fit a EOT crane in a ready building. It has to be planned in advance. So are you aware of what a EOT crane is? Right. So EOT crane is an electric overhead traveling crane. So it travels on rails on top, and it has steel ropes which lift material and actually move them around. So the EOT crane, when it's carrying a weight of say 5 ton or 10 ton, that weight is transferred onto the rail. From the rate, it is transferred onto the building pillars, and from the building pillars, it is transferred onto the foundation. So if you just set up a EOT crane in a warehouse, the entire building is going to collapse. So you have to have a much stronger foundation, you have to have much stronger pillars which are able to take the weight of that EOT crane. Container access is, it goes without saying, so that is mandatory. You have to have 30 feet wide roads minimum. Employee safety is actually very, very essential when it comes to a factory, because you have a lot of workers over there. You have to have, way markers. People should know if there's a fire, how fast they can exit. In actually terms of ETP and actually STP, you require ETP and STP only for factories, because there are lot many workers who need a sewage treatment plant. A normal septic tank will do in a warehouse. Effluent treatment plants are also mandatory, because you have to treat effluents before they are actually discharged, before the water is discharged. Water, you require water in large quantity in a factory, not just because of the people, but because of the processes. Pollution control, of course, there are 4 categories of manufacturing. You have white, green, orange, and red. Red being the most actually difficult to get. So it has to be far away from the city. These are basically the differences between warehouses and factories. So if anybody has any doubts on this, I could take the questions.
What do you see the change in technology that will come in, which will make we have to upgrade ourselves with technology continuously. Like I have seen a warehouse which is in Chakan, where there are no people. It's just the forklifts are they will take from one container, they will put it in the other container. It's all automatic. It's all programmed.
Absolutely.
So this technology is going to happen, and they have that line also, because the forklifts should understand the line. So they have that marking also, which are of typical color, a yellow color with a specific chemical, so that because the forklift doesn't have eyes, so it will move as per the thing. So there are many such forklifts which are there in Chakan also, in Pune, which are all automated, totally automated. No human being taking from this warehouse and putting it into that truck. It's all system.
Absolutely.
So can you see the technological changes in warehouses and industries?
So
it doesn't, as far as the building is concerned.
Right. So all of this has to be planned well in advance. So if you look at one of our clients, DMart, when they gave us a spec, they were extremely clear that the flooring will be done by them. Now what happens is that you actually mentioned about the forklift operating itself. So if it has to go up, if it has to go in the 6th lane, it has to go to the 7th column, and it has to go to the 3rd rack on top. The flooring, even if it varies by about 3 mm, it will not be able to pick the right item. So they are doing a single box of 3 lakh square feet, where your flooring cannot vary by more than 3 mm at any given point. So your flooring has to be absolutely flat. So the cost of making such warehouses is expensive, and these warehouses are actually present all over the world, especially in China, Europe, and US. So yeah, in India, because labor is still cheap, people are reluctant to spend heavily on this. So a normal flooring for a DMart warehouse, which would have costed about 80 rupees a square foot, to do this kind of a flooring cost about 2.5 to 3 times. So all of these are all sensor based. Each and every rack has a sensor. You have multiple sensors. The moment you order something online, immediately a robo is actually operating in a certain warehouse, where it goes and picks your material, brings it, packs it, attaches the label, and is put in the dispatch section. And looking at how many, let's take for example phones. So for example, if 5 people have ordered a Samsung S22 on the same day, after the robo has picked up the material and actually sent it to the dispatch center, there is an automatic order placed with Samsung for more phones. So that is actually artificial intelligence combined with robotics and actually automation. So there is no human intervention at all. The other aspect is the person who's actually coming to deliver the phone to your house. He actually knows precisely where the phone is lying in that warehouse.
on the app, he actually knows that he has to go to that particular warehouse, bay number 5. He just has to pick his material.
Are you all finding this interesting or is it?
Very much interesting. One more question: in current, compared to India and Chennai, who does the maximum transaction? The local brokers, people like you, or still the IPC? So the volume percentage wise they share.
So typically we have taken 4 exclusive European company mandates when we were asked to bid along with IPCs for European companies. We were called along with the Savills, the CBREs and the GLLs and we back the mandates. So it depends on your knowledge, your ability to understand the client's requirement in depth.
It is a general statement that in commercial rental in India, this 4-5 IPC control more than 60% of the transactions.
There's no doubt. Even
in warehouse also same?
Very much. Even in warehousing. But if it comes to industrial, in Chennai, I don't find them competition at all. Because they don't understand the subject. They don't understand what the client wants. They just operate as a normal broker. We don't operate as a broker. We actually operate as a partner to the client to understand precisely what he wants and actually deliver to him what he wants.
So there, what we understand, their plus point is they are getting mandate of the companies which are not India based. That's why that is their plus point. When you say industrial or this manufacturing, not necessarily all could be a foreign manufacturer. Even the local manufacturer, they don't have that kind of a mandate with them. So that's why we come into the picture.
Right. So typically, let me make it as simple as this. Okay. Say if you wanted an office in say 7 cities, who would you go to? You would actually go to an IPC simply because they are actually present across India. So no, that is one big advantage that they have versus us. We are fragmented, we are not united. Anywhere India has actually helped form about 3-4 of these companies which have got people from across India doing transactions together. But maybe we have to do more where it becomes as one single platform. It's always easier to actually operate under one brand across India, so the brand becomes recognized, it becomes easier to do that, and that's what we are doing. As all warehouses, like we started in Chennai and then we started off Delhi and Bangalore, now we're looking at other cities. So it becomes easier for them to come to one person and get the requirements managed. That is one big advantage they have. Second is if they are actually going to compete on a fair basis with a local broker, I think local brokers are far superior. Local brokers have personal connects with people. We get down. We get our feet dirty. We wear our ties and suits only over here.
Very true. Very correct.
Right. So, moving on, who is a preferred tenant? So, we understood the difference between a factory and a warehouse. And many of the owners ask me who's a preferred tenant. Now everyone has their own perception. Typically, the difference between a warehouse and a factory, like I said, a warehousing tenant uses the place only for storage, so he invests minimally in the property. His investment on the business infrastructure is minimal because all he does is just puts up racks and he stores his material. And the operations that he does there are actually fairly very, very simple. When it comes to manufacturing, since the place is used for actually manufacturing, the investment on the upgradation of the property is high. So when I talk about an EOT crane, the owner only provides the provision. He only makes a building heavy enough to hold the EOT. But it's the client that actually has to buy the EOT and install it, including the rails. His investment on his machinery to actually set his foundation bolts or to set everything is actually extremely high. Epoxy flooring is also put on the tenant scope most of the time. So the operations are actually plenty. It requires skilled workforce. Typically, if you actually look at this, what kind of a tenant you would go for? If you have a shed, would you prefer to go for a warehousing tenant or a manufacturing tenant?
So I have clients asking me for they want a warehouse, but they want to do assembly work. It's not fully manufacturing, so they do the assembly work also.
Right.
So how do you treat the case like this?
So typically,
so it is somewhere in between.
Yes. So it's actually somewhere in between. Such a tenant is not going to invest very heavy on the infrastructure. Assembly work only actually requires setting up lines where people actually assemble raw material and actually give out a finished good. So they could also operate out of a warehouse because the power requirements are not very huge. They don't require EOT cranes. So they could always operate even out of a warehouse. Moving on. In a warehousing tenant, it's very important for you to have client satisfaction. You have to ensure that the tenant is happy. Because if the tenant is not happy, it's very simple for him. He's just going to remove his racks and he's going to move to the next shed. The agreements for warehouses, like I said, are for shorter periods. They are easier to actually design and to develop because it is just a single shed. In a factory space, apart from the shed, you have to have a lot of other separate buildings for your power requirements. You have to have a separate space. You have to have a separate canteen space. You have to have a lot of parking space. It's also mandatory to also have a creche these days in actually factory sheds because if you have more than 30 female workers, these rules vary from state to state, but if you have more than 30 female workers, you also have to have a creche. So, like I said, the damage to the property is also minimal when it's a warehousing client because there is not much that he does. The damage to the property is a lot more if it's a manufacturing tenant. A warehousing guy can vacate at short tenants at short notices because he can always move to a place that is cheaper. So I've seen negotiations of 5 paisa by warehousing clients, and I have also noticed in my career the guys who negotiate the most are the Koreans and Chinese. They would negotiate, like I said, even 5 paisa. The other clients don't actually negotiate too much. Indian clients are also don't actually negotiate to that level. If you have a warehousing tenant and if there's a new shed built in the vicinity which is offering him 1 rupee less, the chances are he will move there the moment your lock-in is over.
that cannot be done by a factory tenant. Post tenant vacation, the damage to the property is less, so the expense to the owner is less in case of a warehouse. The repairs to the property post tenant vacation are very high in actually case of a factory shed. The constant churn of tenants keeps the vacancy period longer. So typically the thumb rule that we have calculated, we analyze a lot of data, like I said in actually Chennai. Factory shed typically yields rent for 11.2 months out of 12 months in a 7-year period. Whereas a warehousing shed yields rent of about 9.6 months in actually 12 months, because the vacancy rates are high, because the tenants go on shifting. So when a tenant leaves, there is a period for you to repair the property, which could be 15 days to 30 days. Then you look for a new tenant, by the time you sign, and then he comes and he occupies. He asks you a 1 month rent free period. So you typically get about 9.6 months over a 7-year period. Now, in case of financial failures from the tenant side, it's very difficult to actually vacate somebody who's manufacturing there, because the lenders actually create a issue over there. Whereas in a warehousing shed, it's actually much easier to vacate in actually case of a financial failure. So my choice, my personal choice, we actually moved into development. I haven't shared that as part of my profile. We've acquired 2 lands in Chennai, 20 acres and 25 acres, and we are becoming developers now. We have a very good. So we've been doing this for everybody, so we are doing it now for ourselves. My personal preference is always a manufacturing tenant. So we'll be building about 1 million square feet over the next couple of years. My preference is factory, personally.
They have skin in the game.
Because they are there for longer, they give us longer lock-ins, they invest heavily on the property. They will maintain the property very well. Especially when you have tenants supplying to these big companies, they have a lot of compliances. They have these surprise checks by the parent company. So if you're an auto, and if you're supplying to say Hyundai, Toyota, and Nissan, you will have these people just giving you like a 24-hour notice and walking into your factory for an audit. So everything has to be spick and span at all times. So I prefer those tenants because they actually keep the property also better.
But do we get that kind of landowners who are ready to spend on the infrastructure as per their requirement?
So typically, landowners will spend on the infrastructure for as long as that infrastructure can be used if the tenant vacates. But any infrastructure that's specific to that tenant's personal use, the landlord will not spend. Most likely they will not spend. Even if they spend, they will charge. They'll have to write it off over about 3 years or 6 years over the lock-in, and they'll also charge them an interest on that as well. So in certain cases, we don't agree to all tenant improvements. We ensure that the tenant puts his skin in the game and spends some money as well.
What is it? Suppose I am a landlord and I have a choice whether I should build for warehouse or for a factory. What is the construction time to build warehouse and construction time to build factory?
It's the same.
And what is from your experience, what is the fastest to get the rent, warehouse or the factory?
It depends from location to location. It depends on the demand and supply. There is you can't just generalize it. If you're in a place like Chatan, I think you would always want to build a factory. The same with Sriperumbudur and Murugadam in Chennai. If you're closer to the city, you would want to do a warehouse because factories are not going to get their permissions and licenses. So you can build a warehouse. There's a lot more demand closer to the city. Last mile transportation costs are higher, so we'll actually get people who are ready to actually take storage spaces.
Sometimes in the factory, normally if somebody takes a factory, he takes control of the entire factory, the inside at least the construction. Whereas in warehouse, we have seen that people are sharing the spaces because you may build a warehouse of 1 lakh square foot for one initially, but later on you are not finding, so you don't mind splitting into 50,000 to one, 25,000 to someone. You may have some kind of a partition facility. You must have thought while construction. So is that kind of a thing happening? The owner waits for one person only who takes 1 lakh, or he's giving halfway, or whatever the way, just not to lose that 1 month rental also.
So it varies from person to person. I have clients of all types. I have clients who say that it shouldn't be empty and fine to compromise 2 rupees, 3 rupees. I'm fine to put a partition and give half the space
People have shared manufacturing sheds with actually 2 tenants and 3 tenants. People have not even shared warehousing sheds, saying that I'll wait for that one guy who wants my 2 lakh square feet, but I'll give it only to one person, and he's kept the shed vacant even for a year. So again, it's a perspective. All are right in their own way. Yeah. So this is very very important topic again. BTS, build to suit. So in the absence of available spaces of 2 lakh square feet and above, BTS plays a very very important part. Several times you would have heard from landlords, get me a tenant and I'll build for you. All of us hear this every time. And does this really work? The chances are very very rare. So we have cracked the code on actually how to do BTS, and I'll also share that with you. First things first, there are abundant lands available. So if I wanted a place in for example Chakan, if I'll have one broker show me 5 land parcels and say, sir, I know this owner, he's actually going to build for you, and later I'll have 50 brokers show me 250 land parcels. But whom would I trust? So I advise all my clients that look, just by having a land parcel, it doesn't work. Every owner has actually done this. Some have been successful, it has worked for them in the past, but some will work in future. Please put yourself in the place of a tenant. Why is a tenant setting up a factory? He's setting up a factory because he has a certain order, and that order is time bound. Toyota is not going to come and tell you that supply me these many pieces of steering whenever you feel like. He's going to give you a timeline. He's actually going to say that this is my car launch, this is the month. I actually need 500 steerings every day starting November 1st. So it is actually time bound. Now how can a client trust an owner who actually just has vacant land and is saying that I'm going to build? In actually most cases, the owner doesn't even know how to build. He doesn't know which architect to go to. He actually doesn't know what is actually involved in this. So what we've been doing is we've been actually taking up all these lands from owners. We actually do the designing. We actually do the conversion. We do the plan sanction. We actually make them spend minimal money, get the site built, do the compound wall, and at that stage when I show it to a tenant, the tenant feels happy and satisfied. Now you'll ask me a question, or the landlord will ask me a question that, Amit, you are asking me to take a transaction for 100,000 square feet on 4 acres. What if the tenant only requires 80,000 square feet? Let's face it, if your land has a potential development of 1 lakh square feet, are you really going to build only 80,000 square feet? Most likely not. There are certain cases that if the tenant is very good, you will build 80,000 square feet. But it's always better to get a maximum FSI and actually keep it ready. Tomorrow, if you have a plan sanction for 1 lakh and build 80,000, the government is not going to question you, why did you build this? But you have a plan sanction for 80,000 and if you build 1 lakh, you're going to be in trouble. And the issue in Chennai is like, if you have a plan sanction for 80,000 and if you're going to reapply for 1 lakh, you can't apply for 20,000 separately. You have to apply for 1 lakh again. And a plan sanction costs 150 rupees a square foot, including all outgoings. So it becomes very, very expensive. So we advise landlords, go take a maximum FSI approval, keep it ready. So when a tenant comes, he has a confidence that this guy is serious, he actually knows what he wants to do, and he's also invested. So it becomes a lot more easier to actually deal with those kind of landlords. Now how to get we'll just move on to the next slide because most of this will be covered over there. Right. Very, very importantly, when we are serious about doing a BTS, first your land title deeds should be clear, and it should be cleared by a reputed law firm. There are a lot of lawyers in actually every city, but when you have a reputed law firm, it becomes very easy for you to go to the bank and actually get your funding. It becomes a source of confidence for the tenant that yes, so and so advocate has actually cleared this, so I don't need to do the legal.
Or we can go with the bank so that they can do it. They have their own legal department.
No, so you go to a lawyer who's already on the panel of all the banks, and you actually get it cleared well in advance. Before you actually bring this property to the market, have your legal opinion cleared from a bank panel lawyer. Right? You have to keep the property compound walled and filled. You should have at least minimal plan sanction. You should have proof of funds to show that the project will not be delayed because the tenant, his entire business depends on those timelines. And you also have to show a good professional background. So tenants are actually looking at all of these. If your landlord doesn't satisfy all of these, it's highly difficult for you to close a BTS deal. Now, once you sign a BTS deal, how is it that you actually get the funding? So you already have the land, and you don't have too much money to build 1 lakh square feet. It costs you 20 crores to build 1 lakh square feet, for an example. You could build it by just having about 25% of the money. So once you have the plan sanctions in place and once you've done the minimal development, the tenant has confidence in you. That's when he comes and he signs up with you and he pays an advance. That's when you can straight away sign a lease agreement. And you can go to the bank for LRD. So you can tell the bank that, look, the lease agreement is signed, it's a registered lease and the rents are guaranteed 8 months from now, 6 months from now. So the bank is happy to fund you the remaining 75%. Right. So these are the basics of actually BTS. BTS is actually a much longer subject. If you have any doubts on BTS, you can ask me.
So what kind of companies prefer BTS?
Right. So BTS is typically for what is not available in the market. If it's there in the market, it doesn't need to be built. Very simple. So something with a larger size, something with a specific requirement is actually what comes in BTS.
So what are the typical leases signed for BTS?
So the advantage of a BTS is long lock-ins. So typically when a client comes to you and you're customizing something for him, you can always ask him to actually give a longer lock-in. So a longer lock-in helps you get better terms with the bank.
And what is the payback of the construction which he has built? Payback time?
So most of you have a notepad and a pencil.
Yeah.
Great. So I'll actually run you through an example. I'm not going to name the developer. This is a deal that I did very recently, and the developer paid me in crores for doing this deal. So I'm not going to name him, but you all know him. Okay. So you can just note down. I actually closed a BTS deal for a developer for 2 lakh square feet. This was in Chennai, and I'm not giving you the actual location. Now, the cost of developing this is 1,650 rupees a square foot. So the developer has to spend 2 lakh into 1,650 rupees a square foot. He has to spend 33 crores to build this shed. Now this developer has a good brand, he has a land, he has a plan sanction for 2 lakh square feet, for 2 lakh 40,000 square feet. And he told me, Amit, go and get me, now you told me what to do, I've done it all. Go and get me a BTS tenant quickly. So I got him this actually BTS tenant who's taking this 2 lakh square feet. Now you can write the second line. The tenant is paying a rent of 25 rupees a square foot for 2 lakh square feet, which is a rent of 50 lakh rupees a month. The tenant is actually paying him a 10-month security deposit in advance, which is 5 crore rupees. And this is a registered lease agreement right now, and the shed has to be delivered in 6 months. We have approached a bank. I'll not name the bank. We actually got a funding at 6.9%. And the bank is funding 85% of the construction cost, which is on 33 crore, the bank is funding 28 crore. The tenant has paid a deposit of 5 crore, and the developer is putting nothing out of his pocket. Okay? So a developer has built 2 lakh square feet with no money. All he had was 8 acres of land, and he had a plan sanction.
50 lakh per month.
From the day one, he is making money as a matter of fact.
Right. Now, this lease agreement is locked in for 6 years, which is 72 months. So 72 months, rent goes to the bank. Now, a very, very important aspect here. Out of 50 lakhs, 10 lakhs goes to the developer every month, and only 40 lakhs goes to the bank. So 72 months into 40 lakhs is 28.8 crore, and he's borrowed 28 crore. You will ask me, how is the interest going to be serviced? 6.9%. The interest is going to be serviced from the 5% annual increment. So at the end of 6 years, the shed is free. With a 5% annual increment, 6 years later, the rent has gone up by 35%. Today his rent is actually 25 rupees a square foot. his rent has gone up to 34 rupees a square foot at the end of 6 years. Which means at the end of 6 years, he is getting a rent of 68 lakhs a month. There are buyers in the market to buy these pre-lease assets at 8% ROI. So 68 lakhs a month, that asset will sell at 100 crores, 102 crores. And what did he spend on it?
36.
He spent nothing, apart from 8 acres of land and plan sanction. So we created an asset of 100 crores 6 years later, out of thin air. That's the potential of this business.
Amit, very important question. What was the benefit Amit got?
Amit got a very good commission.
Very important.
Amit already got his commission in crores.
Why the cost of construction in Ahmedabad and Chennai is that 50% increase in
I
rate?
will actually come to that.
So how do you charge?
In Pune, so yesterday somebody told me it is 2,100 for grade A in Pune.
I will come to that. Let's finish off for the BTS. You have any more questions on
So
BTS?
how do you charge the owner brokerage fee?
Very good point.
To the tenant, you can understand it's a risk.
Very good point. Okay, let me share a business secret. Right, so I'm creating a lot of competition. I plan to set up an office in Pune someday, but okay, it'll be nice to have some competition too. So let me explain how the commission works in BTS. Now in BTS, the tenant has hundreds of options because there are hundreds of landowners waiting for a tenant who will come and sign and actually then he'll build, right? So the tenant is not going to pay you. That's the only case where you work without a fee. But the landlord will pay you 2 months rent as well. Sometimes within a 3 months, sometimes within a 4 months. Depends on how good the deal is. And in our case, it was a German tenant. The entire business was understood by me. I designed the whole shed. I arrived at the spec. We arrived at the costing, and we gave a plan to the developer with the funding from the bank at a 6.9%. So when we stitch the deal together like that and we tell him, look buddy, there's nothing for you to spend, just give me this much and this is all yours, he's happy. So your commissions are good in the BTS. They're very good. Sure. So I see at least 50 new people moving to industrial real estate tomorrow. Right. So I'll just move on to what's the cost of a warehouse. All important questions. So what we actually put here is like one line, but I'm actually covering 8 topics which I thought that people will be interested in. These are the questions that the clients are going to ask you. So I'm trying to cover as much as I can in the limited time that I have. So typically grade A and grade B, okay, is actually what we've actually put as sets. I have actually put the price of construction in Ahmedabad at 1,000 rupees and in Chennai at 1,600 rupees. Right. So people will ask me why is this difference and why have you only spoken about Ahmedabad and why only Chennai? Why not Pune? When you're coming to Pune for a proper event, you should be telling us about Pune. Right. So basically I have taken the 2 markets that have the maximum difference. Construction is the most expensive in Chennai. It's the cheapest in Ahmedabad.
Right.
The reason that it's expensive in actually Chennai is because raw material cost is higher, labor cost is higher. There is cartelization of certain material, which I can't name very openly for obvious reasons. I have to go back and live there and do business there. So cement costs are higher, sand costs are higher, steel is standard, labor is higher in actually Chennai compared to Ahmedabad. So I've taken the most expensive market and the cheapest market and I've compared the two. We have data points for 8 different markets, but I've just compared the most expensive with the cheapest just to show you that there can be a 60% variation in India. Yeah. More.
Sanctioning also matters.
Sanction cost is very high in Chennai. I mentioned it's more than 100 rupees a square foot. In actually Ahmedabad, you could get plan sanctions under rupees 20 per square foot.
Under rupees 20.
What should be the land price for a rental of 15 rupees a square foot? If you ask me openly, don't do this business. But the these are questions that people ask me so often that I thought that I should make it part of my of my presentation. Now, this again, I would rather like to share this with you, share this PPT with you. Go through it and understand it, because this is a detailed calculation. You will have to apply your mind to it. I would not want to do it here. I would want people to sit, have a calculator, write down and actually understand it. Because you need to know when you're going to invest what should be a land price in that area. A land price is derived only as a backward calculation from the rental. Don't go by market price. People say, no sir, the price here is 3 crores an acre. But if it doesn't make sense, don't go and offer the land, don't go and work on the land. The most important aspect for us brokers is what deals to work on and what deals not to work on. So typically, if you have seen, I actually go on insisting on what's your land FSI cost, what should be the cost of a land, because I don't want any of you to be wasting your time. So the biggest training in our office is, I had mentioned to you that we generate 3,000 leads a year. So for us, it's very, very important. For us, we close only 50 transactions here. We close only 1.5% of those. So it's very important for us to pick the right ones and close. So no, this will give you this particular 5 slides will actually give you an understanding about how to calculate land cost and whether to work on those lands or not work on those lands, and whether to work on those tenants and not work on those tenants. So I'll actually leave this with you. I would not want to run through this. I can move on. Go ahead. Okay. So many people actually tell me that I want to have Amazon and Flipkart as my tenant. I am sure many of your clients also have told you. So how to get Amazon and Flipkart as a tenant? If you ask me in simple terms, I would say don't do it. Okay. They actually have a lot of specs which make their construction costs very expensive. They are very good tenants. They are good paymasters. They'll be the long term. But you would have to compromise on your ROIs. If you look at the specification sheet of an Amazon or a Flipkart, it could run to as much as 80 to 120 pages. And for you to understand each and every standard, it's all based on global standards. So when you talk about flooring, the flooring runs into about 4.5 pages, and for you to understand each aspect, they will mention a certain global standard. You'll have to go and Google it, look at it, understand it, read 10 pages about each of those standards. For you to understand flooring, it will actually take you 1.5 months. So it is highly complex. There are people who are actually still doing it. The standards are very, very high. Each and every compliance has to be in place. These are all global standards, all very good. But for an investor, if he is particular that he wants them as a tenant, they would he should be willing to work for a 6% ROI rather than a 10% or 11% ROI. Yeah. Go ahead. I'll actually share that with you. You can actually read more about that once I share it with you. It's actually more of an article rather than something for you to work upon. So I have actually completed what I intended to actually share with you, and I'm happy to take questions apart from what we've discussed or something on what we've discussed.
So why did you start working on warehousing on the company?
Why did I start working on warehousing? So typically the honest answer is I got bored of what I was doing. I was into land acquisition. Then we started high-end residential sale. Then we did commercial real estate, and then I was bored. So I was just looking for something different to do. Not necessarily real estate, but then warehousing happened.
What's from the sanction to a complete warehouse, operational warehouse? What is the fastest time you have seen in your career, like in 8 months, 10 months, how much time from after sanction to the government works?
Good. So our first warehouse, we have announced a Bhumi Puja on 22nd of January, which is like 3 months from today. And I have assured my tenant that I'll give him possession on 1st of July. We are starting construction on 22nd of Jan, and we've assured possession on 1st of July. That's about 5 months and 10 days. 160 days. We have a clear schedule on what we are doing on the 160 days. We made a daily schedule.
Systematically.
Yes, completely systematic. I have frozen my entire design. I've frozen each and every vendor. Each and every aspect is actually clearly defined.
Do you have the same architect and the PMG, or you have different people in the PMG and architect?
So, this is something that will baffle you. I have interviewed 55 architects in the last 3 months to freeze on one. The top names, I have met each of them personally and I've narrowed down to one. I selected my architect on 5 parameters. Parameter number one, he should have developed more than 1 crore square feet of factory space.
Experience, right? Experience.
So, because I want the industrial tenant, I don't expect my architect to actually tell me what to build. I'll tell him what to build because that's my depth of knowledge. 3,000 inquiries a year, what location, what size, what spec. I have to give him all those inputs, so I don't expect him to actually do that. But he should have an experience of designing more than 1 crore square feet of manufacturing space, not warehousing space. So if my architect is watching this, I know more than 530 shed owners in Chennai. So I contacted all 530 and I said, tell me who's your architect. So I actually went by references. I actually went by out of the 530, close to 180 shared the details of the architect. I checked which architect was common to more than 5 developers, and I picked only those. I filtered from that. And the last point is I actually got a very good rate. So I had architects who were quoting 20 rupees to 35 rupees a square foot. The scope of services being very elaborate, like they will have to sit and design everything, they'll have to make the working drawings, structural drawings, they'll have to do the BOQs, they'll have to do the 10 bay. They'll have to sit with me and close the deal with the contractor, they'll have to negotiate. You'll have to visit the site you'll have to visit the site twice a month and so on and so forth. So with that scope of work, I actually got a good deal. And I also committed to him that I'll also get him more work for 1 million square feet every year. So he's giving me a good price. Oversupply, tremendous oversupply. Everybody's getting into warehousing and industrial. So there's no doubt that there's going to be a lot of oversupply. But yeah, if this is done scientifically, like the methods I'm telling you, if you know the exact spot to build, if, like I said, four spots in 400 square kilometers. If you know those four spots, where the demand is and why the demand is there, ease of public transport. I've actually covered most of the points. So you know everybody is building in their 400 square kilometers, but if you're at the 4 or 5 main spots, you have the fundamentals in place. It's always going to be demand. Yes, so you're talking about the BTS. So that's a BTS, right? You want a tenant in advance to do the construction. See what you're asking, no? Everybody is asking. It is actually very difficult to get. So basically you actually need to understand where the demand comes from and where the supply comes from. So if you actually get that correct, then it would work. is auctioned, the agri-produce is typically brought to the district headquarters on a daily basis. It's auctioned over there. So people are looking to set up agri warehouses in those kind of locations. So we are in the right place to do something there. There's a lot of potential that in cold storage also. There are a lot of government subsidies. So if you go to the website of the Government of India, I could share the link with you. You could get subsidies of even 49% on your cold storage development for agri-produce. So that's a huge opportunity. But I'm not exploring that right. I'm just focused on that.
In your tenure, like majorly we talk about all these warehouses and factories near to industrial zone. Like in Pune, we talk about MIDC or we talk about Chakan. Did you come across where you have suggested your client completely opposite to that direction? I mean, where you have developed a new area?
See, it is always risky to actually develop a new area. If you go by, if you were to offer lands to the big industrial park developers, they will never go to a new area. They will always go to an area that's tried and tested, and somebody has actually gone and tested areas. So we are not in that, not precisely suggesting to people unless they particularly want it there. So it's like if there's a tenant who wants to be in a certain area, then he can go. But as an investor, you shouldn't. It is definitely not worth the risk.
But suppose if we want to, I mean, what are the what kind of tenants we can look into it?
No, that you have to go and explore in that area. I mean, it's actually very difficult to say. I mean, in a new area, you need to understand what kind of demand is there. See, we are developing something now. Like I said, that we started 2 projects in Chennai, where we just acquired land. So the land is undergoing conversion. One we are hitting ground up in actually January, but we've identified 5 zones where we want to acquire land. And what we do is we actually do a tenant testing before we acquire the land. I offer that location to a tenant, saying that look, you are 7 kilometers away and you're paying 30 rupees a square foot. If I give you something here at 24, would you take it? And I actually do a dipstick, actually check with about 20-25 tenants. If I get a positive answer from more than 60%, I go ahead and buy land. So we use a lot of data. It's very scientific. And what we also do is, while we are doing 5 locations in Chennai, how this started off was, I'm sharing with you because you all could do this as well. It's a very large opportunity. It's not that the entire 25 acres is mine. So I thought that I could do 5 acres in 5 zones. Okay, that's typically the amount of money that I have, that I can buy land and I can develop, or I can do 25 acres in one location. But with the knowledge that I have and the leasing that we've done and the land that we buy very cheap, if we buy land 30 to 40% cheaper than market price, getting investors is not a challenge. So we've set up these baskets of example. In say project A, I'm not giving you the exact numbers for obvious reasons. So we set up a basket of say 10 crores, and I tell everybody I'm putting in the initial seed capital, which is 25%. I have cleared the legal with the top brands. I have gone and already acquired the frontage, and then I'm bringing other investors for 25% each or 20% each, and they actually come very simply on the basis that there's a clear title land and money can be deployed immediately. How many times have investors gone out in the market looking for land and they pick so many documents, negotiate so many deals and are not able to clear legal? It has happened to all of us. We wasted so much time in land. I have paid fees in several lakhs to the top lawyers. When I give them, I go and negotiate 10 lands and actually pick it up and actually give it to the lawyer. He is hardly able to clear 1 or 2 after 3 months. So we spend on 10 legal, we clear 1 or 2. That's the ratio. But when you go to an investor and tell us, look, a top lawyer has cleared this land and it's 30% cheaper than market, money is chasing you. And you have data to prove that this location is not a lease. You put your money first, your skin is in the game. So these are opportunities for all of you.
Sir, why don't you start a franchising company? I mean, it is very difficult for us to do everything from scratch because we are new to this.
Yeah, we will.
You can do the sourcing and you can do the closing because you are an expert in that.
We can, sure. We are, see, basically, we are looking to set up a national brand under one name in about 20 cities, which can take on the bigger players in this field, because it is very important to have one single national brand. And the format is also different. We're looking at a single ownership. When you have 10 owners to a national brand, there are different challenges. Everybody has their own expertise, their own interests, their own ways of working. So the standardization becomes a challenge.
One more thing here. So it is better for people like us who are not into this particular line. Instead of finding out the tenant, we should get mandate from the landowners that we will clear the deal. It may take 4 months to 8 months time to find out, as you say, title clear, sanction clear. We request landlord to spend this money and we get the mandate to do this. And then we talk to other people like who are good in getting the tenant. Maybe have a share the brokerage.
That's what we do. So we get landlords, clear their property, keep things ready, get the sanctions, and then we offer it to tenants. Now we started doing it ourselves. We're getting investors to invest in the land that we are clearing, and we offer it to tenants.
So that the control is there, at least from
There's a lot more control here. So this is a development part that I'm talking about. It's not the brokerage part. At a certain stage, it could become a conflict of interest. We're seeing how to high-work that and keep it as a separate distinct entity with a separate management. So there are challenges in this, of course.
So what you have achieved is commendable. What is the strength of your team that's helping you get through all of this?
It's me plus 2.
Great commendable.
The bigger problem, I tell you, the 2 keep changing every 4 months. The problem is that I have an issue that I want my team to know each and every aspect, because knowledge is power is the way that we differentiate ourselves from the other broker. So when somebody comes and joins my office, he has 1,200 pages of content that I've created personally, and he has to go through an exam after 30 days and after 60 days and after 90 days. And by the time he resigns and he leaves. The second problem, I'll tell you, is I have IPCs poaching my team all the time. So I just give you an example of a gentleman who joined me in 2019 when I started warehouse leasing. He joined at 15,000, and in 2020, in actually COVID, his salary jumped to 30. In 2021, his salary jumped to 60. And in 2021, an IPC pulled him at 1.2 lakhs. So purely because he was trained under me. So we have these kind of issues. The other 2 keep changing, but I have landlords who will simply give me mandates, saying, Amit, I don't want to deal with those big 4 or big 5 or whoever. Whenever you get a tenant, do it. So it's also a lot of relationship that goes into this. And yeah, of course, God is kind. Absolutely, that's the main point.
What is tentative rate per square feet difference between RCC and prefabricated set?
Demand and supply. In the heart of the city, your RCC will fetch more than PV, and far away outside the city, PV will fetch more than RCC. Because the demand for RCC is very less far away from the city. People want PV at any higher height. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned you're doing about 50 deals a year, so that's about 1 deal a week. So
1 deal a week, yeah.
So with a team of only 2 people, how are you able to do?
So typically the USP of all warehouses is speed. Okay, now when somebody leaves an inquiry on a website, they actually get a call within 1 hour. There's an automated mail that goes out confirming the service fee. They actually get a call. Out of 10 inquiries a day, we only pick 1 to actually work on. The options are sent immediately. Most cases we try and do the client inspection on the same day. and there are 4 transactions where we received an inquiry in the morning, inspection has been done before lunch, negotiation has been done post lunch, and agreements have been signed before the end of day, and we've also collected a commission check on the same day. So we've done this 4 times in the last 2 years.
So what do you think, for a good, consultant, you should be role of landlord or tenant? What is more important?
See, typically, what is easy? Easy is landlords. Landlords. Inventory is available to everyone because landlords are willing to work with everybody. See, getting tenants is difficult. So what we do is we have a relationship established with landlords first. We actually typically spend a year establishing strong rapports, and then we don't focus on landlords at all. We only focus on tenants. So one side of my business is completely covered. I don't need to touch it. So my focus is purely tenants.
What are the new avenues that you think will become co-linked with this? Any new avenues of business which are very close to warehouses and industries, and something more that may come up in the near future, immediate near future?
I have 3 brilliant ideas, and let me execute them and I'll share it with you in a year. But I'll tell you, at the annuity model where you sit at home and get your money, there are opportunities in this business. I mean, I'm not talking about rental income. It could be, I actually think that you're aware about Strata.
Yeah.
Okay, so Strata uses my videos to train their people, and Sudarshan Loda is a very dear friend of mine. So people are looking at rental income post-COVID. Property management is actually very big opportunity. So we are working on such kind of concepts where there's an annuity coming in, without you actually having to go out there and close deals. Yeah, I'm just looking for a young co-founder. I've been interviewing people, but I've not found the right person yet.
So when I asked this, I had something in mind, but I thought I'll elaborate more on that.
Yes.
See, if you see every other day there's a new data warehouse is created. So do you think there is any scope for, because it is just a land transaction, or you can do a BTS transaction for a warehouse? As far as I know, it's as of 90% it's only a land transaction for a data warehouse inside.
You're talking about a data center.
Data center, yes, data center.
Right. See, data center is completely a different business altogether. It's a new vertical of commercial real estate. We are not too focused on that.
Last question, I guess. Since the multi-mode transportation and that hub is coming overall, so how do you see the future of industry? The first thing, and second thing, since you have mentioned the local influence, as a lot of land parcels are with the natives or local ones, so how we can educate them more to get into the A grade warehouse? How we can do that?
Okay, so these are 2 separate questions altogether.
Yes.
Now you're talking about multimodal logistics parks related to industry.
Yeah, how it is.
So let me explain to you what's a multimodal logistics park. So multimodal logistics park is basically something like a free trade warehousing zone or a dry port, which is connected by road and connected by rail, which eventually takes you to a seaport or an airport. Okay, so that's a multimodal logistics park. Now why is the government setting up this all across India? Because they don't want manufacturers to focus too much on how to get their goods from their factory to outside the country. So they create a multimodal logistics park where you manufacture and just go drop it off there. And these are being created inland in actually many places across India. So you don't need to focus on your logistics of getting it either to Chennai port or Tuticorin port or Kochi port or JNPT or whatever. So you go drop it off there. It is actually their responsibility to actually have it shipped up. So of course you sign a contract, you decide what the fees are quoted to you. So it has nothing really to do directly related to industry, but it's only making the ease of business where the manufacturer has to focus on his core activity of manufacturing. He should remove logistics out of his stress. So that's addressing your first question. Can you just repeat the second question?
How we can educate the local landlords to get a
Right.
grade warehousing?
Right.
Because sometimes they are very adamant that highway or my way. This is how it happens.
Absolutely. So the classic example, the best example anywhere in India is the Magarpata city. There is nothing better than that. So if you really want to do something with a local landlord on a partnership, that's a classic example. But typically it's very difficult to get many people to actually think alike.
Yeah.
And to share your vision and to expect them to actually align with your vision. So it's always better to have fewer people. It's always better to buy out the land and do it yourself.
What is the growth rate of this warehousing and these things? Since the Modi is focusing more on Make in India and lot of new companies are ready to come to India because of that approach. So what are the growth rate? You can say 15% IRR or 30% IRR. What are
So you're talking about the increase in manufacturing in India?
Yeah.
So if you look at data, data shows currently a 6% growth, but the actual numbers could be a lot higher in the coming years. India has a phenomenal opportunity over the next 3 years. It's absolutely phenomenal.
And what should be their tenants' preference? They want to manufacturing point of view. They want to prefer to stay in MIDC or outside MIDC private industrial park. What are the tenants more?
Very good question. Now let me answer this. And this is what is the big opportunity actually. So if somebody wants to set up a factory and they go to MIDC, what is it that MIDC gives them? MIDC gives them land. So you first have to buy land. It's on a 99-year lease. Am I right?
Yeah.
So you buy land at somewhere about 2 crores an acre, roughly. It could be 1 crore, 1.5 crore, whatever. So you buy land at 2 crores an acre. Now you want to build 1 lakh square feet. To build 1 lakh square feet, it's going to cost you anything between 20 to 30 crores in total. What is the ROI that investor in the market is happy with? 11%. But what is the ROI that a manufacturing guy has to make? It's viable to do manufacturing only if you're making a 30% ROI. Very simply put, you have to make a minimum 30% ROI. There are a lot of manufacturing companies that make much higher than that. Many of them in the range of 60 to 85%. So why would a manufacturing guy take land from Chakan and build and lock his money at 11% ROI? He would rather put that money in his business.
Working capital.
Yes, he could take a place on rent and actually expand his business even more, which is actually yielding him a 30% plus. So no, that's the opportunity here for us. That's why we are actually getting into that. Where investors are happy with 11%, getting their passive income, whereas these people who rather go to a SIPCOT. A SIPCOT is the equivalent of the MIDC. SIPCOT is in Tamil Nadu, MIDC is in Maharashtra. So we pitch to those people that if they have even taken the land and built their shares, we go and approach them and we tell them to sell it to us and lease it back.
You can say that for us, government is a competitor here because they are promoting MIDC in a bigger way.
Yeah. Government is not a competitor at all. So you know that land can be sold, right? The asset can be sold and leased back to the tenant. Maybe you may have to pay some sublease charge to actually MIDC. So we go and we approach people who own these factories and we tell them that why don't you actually sell it to us and lease it back? You will deploy this 20 or 30 crores into your business for your further growth. So you should look at this opportunity. But you all are asking very intelligent questions and pulling out all the business secrets.
Because we are a member of PROP.
A very innovative association. It's always appreciated at NAR India for the kind of new initiatives that you bring up. You're doing absolutely great work. Sure. So if you're done, we can actually chat over a coffee or something. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Amit. I think it was one of the interesting sessions which PROP had. I can thank Amit, I call him my younger brother normally. So officially as a president, definitely I have to thank him. And I would definitely like to thank our national president, Sunil Arora sir at the head table for giving me this opportunity to take care of business growth in India. Thank you so much. Now I will request Preeti Chadda to come forward for vote of thanks. Could I request Preeti to come forward and felicitate Amit sir? Thank you, Preeti. Thank you, Amit. Friends, I recognize the presence of our zone director, Advocate Ashwin Rasne. Sorry sir, because of rains, we could not help you where parking is concerned. Could I request our chairman, Mr. Kishan Milani, to felicitate Advocate Ashwin Rasne, please? Thanks for coming down. Friends, last time in the AGM we had felicitated certain of our members who had done a very big business. There was one very senior member who could not come that day, and he is none other than our own member, Mr. Narayan Nair. Could I request him to please come forward and request our zone director to felicitate Narayan Nair for doing a big business success. He's a past joint secretary. Thank you so much, Narayan. Beautiful venue. We are going to have beautiful high tea now. I think that's on the first floor. That's on the first floor. We can have a proper chat with Amit and Ashwin ji and do networking over there. So we have to go down to the first floor. Before that, I would request our chairman to felicitate the manager of this hotel. Actually, we wanted to felicitate Akhil ji, but Akhil ji is not here. So I would request the manager on his behalf to come forward and take the token of love from Prop. Thank you, sir. So friends, the meeting is adjourned and let's go for our fellowship on the first floor. Thank you so much. God bless. Could I request all the members, Udayan, a group photograph. Come, all of us.
Then it's for a Facebook tomorrow.
Thank you.